All right, so in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make 3 carnivore, I guess, dinner dishes, supper, whatever you like to call it. They're actually surprisingly simple. Usually when I come up with recipe ideas, I'm kind of dreading to see how much effort it's actually going to take to make these. But as I got to doing these, they really didn't take much effort at all. So if you've been searching for some really easy dinners, I think these 3 are going to make you happy. And before I continue on, I just want to say that this video is sponsored by Carnivore Companion. That is my company. We make seasonings with no BS. We don't want you to have to go on Google and figure out what tricalcium phosphate is, or try to figure out why silicone dioxide even needs to be inside your food in the first place. Just clean, simple ingredients. Use code CarnivorousChef to save 20% off your order. Links down in the description below. And let's get started. Chili cornbread bake. Cornbread, chili bread, corn chili bread. Chili on the bottom, cornbread on top. That's what we're about to make. I don't know if there's a real name for this dish. It's really just like a chili casserole with cornbread on top. But I'm sure there are people that have names for this dish out there somewhere. I want you to leave a comment down below what you call this, or even comment what I should call this, because I don't even know anymore. But the first thing we want to do is start making some chili. And if you've not seen my channel before, I have this chorizo chili that I like to call cheater chili, just because chorizo acts like a great base for chili that I found that just works. I will beef it up a little bit with some seasoning, but honestly, it's not going to take a whole lot to make this taste good. The first thing you're going to need to do is start to brown up 1 pound of ground beef. And while that's browning, initially, I'm going to add just a big pinch of salt. This is probably about a 1/4 teaspoon to this, just to get some insurance to know that my ground beef will be seasoned well. And once that is browned nicely, I'm going to create a little well, or reduce my heat just a touch. And I've got just a little more beef fat than I want in there, so I'm going to take a couple paper towels and just absorb it. You can always drain this if you want to. Just be careful if you choose to do this. For the chorizo, I'm going with this Casserole beef chorizo. This is a 9-ounce tube, and I will add all of it to my pan and start breaking that up. You'll probably notice that it's mostly rendering more than it is browning, which is fine. That's what we want. I like to look at the chorizo as more of like a chili starter than a meat. All right, now that that is fully incorporated, I'm gonna take some beef stock and I'm gonna roughly add about 1 cup just to get it started. Excuse me, a 1/2 cup just to get it started, and reserving some just in case it gets a little too thick and I want to thin it out a little bit. Just bring that to a simmer and then we'll let it bubble for about a minute or 2. All right, once it's done simmering, let's go ahead and shut it off. Let's give it a little taste. And it is pretty much there. What I like to do with chili as well is I like to add a taco seasoning because it gives you all those extra flavors like the cumin, a little bit of extra chili powder and stuff like that. And to get those flavors, I'm going to be using some taco shake by Carnivore Companion. Let's start with a 1/4 teaspoon, mix it in, and give it another taste. I'm gonna go with 1 more 1/4 teaspoon. Let's give it 1 more taste. And that is perfect. Now we're going to set this aside so that we can make our carnivore cornbread topping. Get yourself a food processor, but if you don't have that, a blender will work as well. And to it, go ahead and add 3 ounces of ground pork rinds. If you don't have ground pork rinds, feel free to use whole pork rinds, which are just the unadulterated state of ground pork rinds. And to this, I'm going to be adding a 6-ounce chicken breast. Feel free to use ground chicken if that's what you have. Just break it up into the food processor. To this, we are going to need to add 3 eggs, which is roughly $6,000 if you're watching this anytime after this video was posted. I can only imagine how much they are now. God, they're probably up to like $25,000 for a dozen eggs. Follow this up with 1 teaspoon of baking powder, just to give it some of that fluff action. And finally, finish this off with 3 tablespoons of chicken stock. I have this beef stock still left from the chili, so I'm going to use that. It's not really going to add a whole lot of extra flavor. It's really just there to help things be moist. Once that's all in there, get it processed, and let's check it out. It's looking pretty good, and I think I want a touch more moisture than this since it is going to be a topping. I'm going to go ahead and add an additional 3 tablespoons of the stock. All right, now that that's done, we can start to assemble this thing. So if you cook this in a pan that is oven safe, that's fine. You can go ahead and put the topping on top of the chili. I'm trying to get a better presentation, so I'm going to use my little mini cast iron skillet. If you have a casserole dish, this will work too. You'll need a pretty small casserole dish, probably a 9x9 or something like that, just a little square. Get your chili into your dish, and then I'm just going to start taking my cornbread and pressing it on top. And from the looks of it so far, we probably won't need all this chicken carnivore cornbread mixture, but that's not to say that you don't have to use it if you don't want to. But if you want a more accurate recipe of what I'm going to be doing right here, I'll leave that in the description below, as well as the full recipe for this cornbread mixture. All right, this is pretty much ready to go. I'm going to take a little more of my taco seasoning and just sprinkle it over the top. Now we're going to take this, throw it in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 22 minutes. This thing is insanely hot. I really want to try it because it smells great in my house right now. However, I'm going to let this sit for roughly 10 to 15 minutes. So let's give that 10 minutes, and I'm ready to taste this thing. I'm gonna throw on a little bit of very optional green onions. Grab a little plate. Let's get a nice scoop of that. Throw it right there. That's about what it looks like. Cornbread and chili. It's so good. The cornbread surprises me every single time I make it. But the chili with it, it's almost creamy. The cornbread has a little bit of crunch and a light chew to it, but it's also got some grittiness going on with the cornbread topping. And it's just so good. So I don't really watch a whole lot of normal TV because I'm watching YouTube for the most part. Normal TV, I mean like channels that include commercials that you can't really avoid. But recently I watched some normal TV and I kept getting this commercial over and over again.
The critics are raving. Little Caesar's Crazy Puffs are the summer blockbuster.
And after seeing it like 20 times, I had the craving for it. And since I can't have that in particular, I'm just going to make it myself and it will be carnivore. So I've got 5 ingredients here to make this. It's going to be super fast and it should be quite simple. The first thing we need to do is get a mixing bowl and add in 1.5 ounces of ground pork rinds. Follow that up with 2 eggs. And then just kind of fork it around. It'll look kind of like this, a little bit runnier than I want it to. But what I'm going to do is let it sit for roughly 5 minutes until it kind of hydrates through the pork rind. So 5 minutes. And it looks like this now. It's not such a soupy runny mess, which is what I was looking for. Next up, let's grab a muffin tin, and what we're gonna do is take this batter and start adding a little bit in there, and then run your hand under some cold water just to get it a little moistened so the batter doesn't stick to it. And all we're gonna do is push this down and work its way up the sides a little bit. So I still want it to be muffin-like, and I want the crust to almost be like a deep dish pizza. Just make sure there aren't any holes in the bottom of it. So let's go ahead, get the rest of our muffin holes filled. Next up, what we're gonna do is take pepperoni and mozzarella and layer them kind of like a lasagna, because that's what it looked like they did from the pictures I saw in the commercial and online. We'll lay a few pepperonis down, and then I will top each one with a little low moisture, fresh shredded mozzarella. And then we will repeat that like 1 to 2 more times. I think that's enough for me. I did 2 layers total. I'm gonna finish this up with a little Italian seasoning just to get that pizza-y kind of flavor. You can use whatever you want for this. If you just want to use dried oregano, that'd work fine. We'll kind of brush off this little bit of excess cheese so it's not crazy stuck to everything. I've got my oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm gonna throw this in there for 17 minutes or until they're nice and golden brown on top. So these are obviously insanely hot. I'm gonna let them cool down 5 minutes. They are ready to be tasted. As you can see, it did a really good job coming out of that pan. They look awesome. And I do want to cut one in half to kind of get a cross section, see what they look like. And there it is right there, very cheesy and pepperoni looking. Got that seasoning on top. Let's give them a taste. Now, I know a lot of people don't like pork rinds or the flavor of pork rinds that you get with stuff like this. But what's good about this is that the pepperoni is so strong in flavor. And if you top it with a little bit of Italian seasoning, it almost just completely gets rid of that pork rind flavor. So if that's going to stop you from eating these, I would honestly just suggest trying this out to see what you think. Honestly, this is a great way to have pizza. You know, if you don't want to eat pizza and feel like a big old dumpster fire, why don't you just make these instead? It's got a good chew to it. It's got a good flavor, obviously. And that's what we're looking for. So for this one, we're going to be cooking and eating some bones, but really the bone marrow. Don't eat the bone. I mean, you can eat the bone, but today I want the bone marrow. I found these in my local grocery store, and I believe they're like between $7 and $10. And this is a 2-pound bag, considering that this is still bones. The majority of that weight is this. So the first time I ate it, I think my descriptor was cow butter or something like that, because that's kind of what it is. Once you cook this down, it just gets so smooth and creamy, and it's very rich. We need to make at least one big step before we do this, which is making a saltwater brine. Here I have roughly, I don't know, 3 cups of filtered water. I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of salt to this just to get it started. Mix it up until you don't see any more salt floating around in it. Just give it a taste, and that's good. It should be salty. It shouldn't overpower you with salt. We're not doing this, we're not making this brine for these bones to season them per se, although it will season them by displacing water. What we're really trying to do is remove all the impurities, like the random minerals that are in it, as well as any excess blood. So just simply pour that over your bones and make sure it's covering all the marrow. And if you need to add a little more water just to kind of make sure all the marrow is covered, that should be fine. There we go. Let's pop a lid on this bad boy. And then let's throw it into the fridge for at least 6 hours, if I had to say, but preferably overnight. And so it's been about 24 hours since I've done this. And as you can see, the water in here has turned red. The bone marrow actually looks pretty white inside. All I'm gonna do is pour this off. Then let's grab a foil-lined baking sheet. Simply throw these on here. The last thing I'm going to do is season these up with my steak seasoning of choice, which is obviously steak dust by my company, Carnivore Companion. I'm going to go pretty lightly. I just want the top of it to get a little extra seasoning. So next up, we need to throw this in the oven. I've got my oven set to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and that should take about 20 minutes. And these are looking good. They should be gelatinous. I'm going to let these cool off for just a few minutes. It is 10 in the morning. I don't think I've ever had just bone marrow for breakfast, ever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook up some other things I would normally eat and then throw this onto a plate with what I would usually have, which is ground beef and eggs. This honestly looks like a really well-rounded breakfast, or whatever the Pop-Tarts commercials used to say. So let's just get that out of here. I want to taste this by itself, see how it did. And it's looking pretty gelatinous. That's pretty much what it's supposed to look like. Let's give it a taste. Oh yeah, oh, that is rich. Whew, that'll wake you up. It's really delicious. It's salted well enough on the inside, but that little bit of extra seasoning on top really did a lot for it. It added some extra flavors to it that I didn't get with just the salt. But let's give it a taste with our other elements to see what it tastes like with those. God, that was a good bite. And also know that this wasn't so much a recipe as it was a technique on how to do something. We've got to start somewhere. If you want to see more of these bone marrow recipes, just let me know. I will happily do some pondering around my orb. But if you do make this, enjoy it with a burger and an egg. It's really nice. All right, and that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you tried any of these recipes. My personal favorite from the video was the carnivore chili cornbread bake casserole thing, but I'd also like to know which one of these was your favorite. Don't forget, check out my company, Carnivore Companion. Use code CarnivorousChef, save 20% off your order. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.